The Central Bank of Nigeria has imposed fresh cash withdrawal limits on individuals and organizations, which will become effective on January 9, 2023. According to a memo issued by the CBN to banks on Tuesday, individuals will only be able to withdraw 100,000 naira per week from over-the-counter point-of-sale machines or automated teller machines, while organizations can access 500,000 naira per week. Withdrawals above the stipulated limits shall attract processing fees of 5% and 10% respectively. The memo signed by the CBN's Director of Banking Supervision, Haruna Mustafa, directed banks to load only 200 naira and lower denominations into their ATMs. This means Nigerians will only be able to withdraw 20,000 naira per day from ATMs when the directive becomes effective. To help us look at this policy, we are joined by Sumbo Badijoko, a public affairs analyst. He joins us virtually. Hello, Sumbo. Good to have you join us today. Well, very quickly, we're looking at this particular policy, which was recently, or let's say a directive recently released by the CBN, the Central Bank of Nigeria, putting a limit on cash withdrawal made by individuals and organizations with effect from January 9, 2023. Let's get your thoughts.
Yes, when the news broke yesterday, I was like, wow, these people are really serious. Well, as a policy in theory and on paper, is a very good thing, and it's going to help the cashless policy of the CBN. But the thing is, when you look at the timing, I'm not really comfortable with the timing. Not timing in respect of the beginning of the year that they expect it to take off, but because it's coming in between the exchange of the old notes with the newly designed notes. I expect a situation where they would allow that the new note to become fully circulated before this one is coming up, because there's going to be a kind of conflict in the process. That is what I foresee. But in terms of the policy itself, is a good thing. It's not something that will affect an average Nigerian. It is only those who move large amount of money around that may likely be affected.
I like that you mentioned something that's very important. That's the timing, looking at how that this could affect people's access to the newly redesigned denominations and all. That's a good one. But let's look at what the CBN is saying. The CBN is saying that this is in line with its cashless policy. So how progressive is this? Let's have your thoughts. I understand you've said earlier that you think it's a good one. But looking at cashless policy, I'm asking because currency in circulation, when we look at that, as at October 2022 was 3.3 trillion naira, and that's about 6.5% of money supply, and out of that amount 2.8 trillion naira was outside the banking vault. And many analysts have said that this does not represent, something that is too much or something that should make us start coming up with such drastic policies as this particular one. What are your thoughts?
Yes, when you look at as I said, the timing, I'm not comfortable with the timing, because they ought to have waited for the exchange process to fully take place. I suspect this one is coming targeted at some politicians ahead of the next election. Probably they want to limit the amount of cash they will have access to throw around. But that is on the political side. On the real economy of it, it's not going to have much effect on the average Nigerian household. How am I sure of this? About 85% of our population earn an average of 60,000 naira per month. If you divide that by 4, that will give you like 15,000 in a week. And they have the chance to withdraw over the counter 100,000 and 20,000 through the POS or ATM, which means they will not really be affected that much. And for the cash deposits, more than 96% of the bank account that we have, they have less than 500,000 as minimum asset deposit in the bank. So a good number of Nigerians, because of the poverty in the land, don't have that buoyancy to the extent that this kind of policy can now affect them. Yes, there will be a kind of revenue increase for the banks, because it means people will now be doing more of transfers and online transactions, and with commission attached. And those who still want to withdraw above 100,000, they still have the opportunity. All they just need to do is calculate the 5% of whatever they want to withdraw and pay to the bank as charges. So which means in all, both on the 5% commission and the commission on each transaction that the commercial banks will be deducting, is going to be adding more revenue to the banks. Whether or not they will now convert that to proper use is another thing entirely.
Well, I'm still bent on this cashless policy thing. How exactly are we really in a situation where we have too much money in circulation? Is the money not supposed to be in the hands of people so that they can make transactions with them? Saying that, you know, I mean, it's a mode of payment. That's cash payment. It's a mode of payment. And then when you look at what we have in the vaults, you know, as against what we have out there, the percentage really isn't much. Why is there so much noise? Why is the CBN bent on reducing cash in circulation when some analysts believe that, well, we don't really have a problem with cash in circulation? That's the point I really want you know, to drive home.
Yes, there's so much noise because the CBN is actually targeting some individuals which have become an enemy of the state, those involved in criminal activities and some economic sabotage. So those are the ones that are being targeted, and those are the ones that are likely to be affected by this policy. And that's why I agree with analysts who have also said that, well, the situation we have is not really, but we're talking about the interest rate that is still at double digits. When you have those money that are outside of the banking system return back to the vault, it's going to give the CBN a leverage to kind of look at the interest rate, which is currently at about 16.5% as we speak. That is still on the high side. We have advanced countries that are having 7%, some even 5%, and they are even claiming that the 7% is the highest we've recorded in 40 years. When was the last time we had a single-digit interest rate in Nigeria? I can't even remember. So these are things that when you don't have a favorable interest rate, it's going to be affecting business, especially access to capital, because most people that wants to come into business that will need capital will be having a rethink, especially when you have a situation where there are some infrastructural challenges and bottlenecks that they have to confront with, which will affect their chances of paying back the loan. And these are the reasons why we have so many bad loans in all the banks that we have. So it's not something that the government is targeting at everybody. They have some selected individuals that are being targeted. And of course, they will definitely likely achieve their aim. I'm just not comfortable with the fact that they didn't allow the so-called new design naira to really go into circulation. And I also have this reservation about the ATM now being loaded with the highest denomination of 200 naira. If that is going to be the case, I expect the 500 and 1,000 naira note to be phased out of circulation entirely. Because if you are going to, that means you're going to be having more of that bill, that 200 naira bill in circulation. And that has its own implication already for those who will be doing large volume of transactions. So it's going to be helping their cashless policy. As that which is the main goal. But in the whole hall, because of those who are going to be really love moving cash around, because even the time frame, there are some native businessmen that do not believe in online transaction because of fraud and what have you. So this category of people now will require more time for them to go through the training of how to go about secure online transaction. Now that time frame between now and January 9th is just 4 weeks or thereabouts. It may not be enough, because even if a policy that come up by information that came into circulation yesterday. Now before everyone will get into the know of what the whole thing entails, we would have already gotten to January 9th. And by the time people now begin to adjust, this kind of people, I'm talking about merchant farmers in the villages, some other traders that are in our major markets that don't really, they like depositing cash. People like in the, there's a textile market in Ibadan here, where those people that are there deal with large volume of cash. They don't really believe much in transaction, and the banks they deal with, they also know that these are big-time customers that come to deposit huge amount of cash. So this group of people will be affected, even though we are targeting the bandits and kidnappers and some politicians. But these other people doing legitimate things that also move large volume of cash around is going to be affected. So they need time frame, and you need to really capture them into the policy, because cashless thing is good, but we are not at that level of development to go fully cashless or to the level of cashlessness that the CBN is trying to propose right now.
All right. I actually like that you've talked about the informal sector and how that it's going to affect them. I was going to take you on that when you said that we're in a country where so many people are poor and not so many people have up to 500,000 naira in the bank accounts. I like that you've also highlighted the impact this will have on some businesses. You called them traditional people, but you know, it just remains the truth. But very quickly, you said something about interest rate. And I believe that the reason the CBN, or let's say the MPC, is raising the interest rate is because it seeks to address inflation, rising inflation. And there are those who are saying that we cannot keep increasing the interest rate because we want to address inflation. What other things, you know, is the CBN and maybe the fiscal committee or the fiscal policy, what fiscal policies are we seeing, you know, in a bid to address this rising inflation that we're talking about? Very quickly, before we get back to the conversation for today, I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. You know, using the instrument of NPR, increase in NPR to address Nigeria's inflation.
Well, Nigeria's inflation is something that is is against the norm. You know, you have inflation when there is perpetual increase in the price of commodity due to the large amount of money in circulation. But you have, what we have in Nigeria is perpetually increase, which is not due to the large amount of money in circulation, but due to the activities of some high-class businessmen who want to maximize profit at the expense of the masses. And of course, due to the forex crisis that we're currently having. That's the reason why we have this inflation. And until the CBN do something about it. Yes, the federal government, in terms of its fiscal direction, wants to remove subsidy. But if you remove subsidy on petroleum, on the price of petrol, you need to invest that subsidy somewhere else if you really want to relieve the burden on the masses. And where can the government inject subsidy that will be a form of relief on the part of the masses? That is on the price of food commodities. Because a good number of people in Nigeria will spend more money on utilities, food, clothing, and shelter than what we actually spend on other things. And these are things that the prices have gone up because of the cost of construction in this country, cement and what have you. And average house rent has gone up by 120% in the last 4 years. Now, that is on the one side. Food prices too have increased by as much as 120% as well in the last 4 years. And this cannot continue because the fixed income earner have not had their salary increase. When was the last time the minimum wage was raised to 30,000? That's over 6 years ago. And up till now, we are still having we still have that same wage being collected by them, and every other thing they do with that money has gone up. They are doubled in terms of amount. So they need to look around the price regulation of all these commodities if they really want to, because interest rate concern those who are in business. How about those who are not in business, who also need a good purchasing power to be able to patronize the services of those that are in business? Because everything works together to have a robust economy.
Absolutely, and at the end of the day, the cost is being passed to the consumers. We all bear the brunt. Very quickly, let's look at the value of the naira in the peer-to-peer foreign exchange window. Yesterday, it exchanged with the dollar at 760 naira per dollar. And when you compare this with what we had the previous day, 739 naira per dollar, we'll see that we have a 21 naira decline. Do you think this was prompted anyway by the memo that was issued yesterday by the CBN?
In a way, it is, because right now, it's one of what the CBN is trying to do to really strengthen the naira against the dollar. But policy alone will not solve that. There are some other actions that needed to be taken. You know, we have so many official recklessness that is actually affecting the naira. We import so many things, not just goods, but also services. For instance, healthcare service we import. We will have our officials going on health pilgrimage, and they will demand for dollars and foreign currency. So many people send their children abroad for schooling. They will demand for foreign currency. Some people will go for normal religious pilgrimage. They will demand for foreign currency. These are things we can do without. These are things that we have local alternative to. that we can, of course, that's pilgrimage that people go on religious ground is tourism revenue for those countries. We also have our own tourism potential here that we need to develop by tackling security around those corridors and attracting people to also come and demand for our naira, because that is where we make the naira to be strengthened in the balance of trade. For now, the naira is being weakened by all these activities. So just pronouncement or taking some policy decision alone is not enough, even though it will help in a way. But these other things also need to be looked into if we really want to solve the problem as a whole.
Okay, well, let's get back to this particular circular. Now, we'll look at some of the provisions in that circular. It says that in compelling circumstances, not exceeding once a month, where cash withdrawals above the prescribed limits would be required for legitimate purposes, such cash withdrawals shall not exceed 5 million naira and 10 million naira for individuals and corporate organizations, respectively. Do you think this will address whatever fears, the CBN really has? If you get me correctly, I'm asking that the directive that talks about, in rare occasions, there might be situations where individuals can withdraw 5 million and then corporates can withdraw 10 million naira. And I'm asking that, okay, since they've given some of our prerequisites for, accessing this amount of money, do you think this will address some of the fears? Because you mentioned earlier, talking about illicit flow of cash or illicit flow of funds. Talk to us about this.
Of course, there has been provision for those, and they know those people can afford to pay the charges. That's why I said for the banks, there will be a boost in their own revenue, in their own profits, because they're making a lot of money from transactions, transfers now, and other form of online transactions. They will also be making a lot of money from commission charges on those above the normal rates that people would want to withdraw. For instance, if you are putting a benchmark of 100,000 on an individual, and you have someone, maybe is a high-profile personality that needs to really transact with 2 million naira cash, it will have to pay 5% of that 2 million, which is about 500,000. That's as commission. That is going to be added to the profits of the banks. And I said, they will be making a lot of money. Whether or not they will now channel the money to proper use is another issue entirely, because for whatever policy that the government brings up, the Nigerian factor has a way of creeping in and attempting to sabotage such policies.
All right. Well, thank you for your thoughts on that one. I was actually trying to confirm if that particular clause, helps the CBN to achieve its goal. Talking about, its interest in probably making sure that we address the flow of illicit funds. But of course, that's by the way. Well, quickly, before we end the conversation, I'd like to have your final thoughts.
Yeah, I would want a situation where the policy can be pushed till 1st of February. That is when they would have stopped the exchange of the new currency bills with the old ones. It will be more effective at that time, because it's going to be double stress on the part of the people who are striving to exchange, bring in their whole deposits into the bank, and you're now putting a limit on what they can withdraw. That is not going to be fair on them. But you can wait till the deadline for this exchange is gone by 1st of February, then we can now begin to know that, okay, this is the only challenge that we have to face, and we are facing it. And of course, we also need to exercise action, because it's going to slow down the rate of transaction, especially with this from this informal sector group of people that I mentioned. And when there is a slow down in the rate of transaction, it's going to be affecting the economy in a way, because it is a new year and the fiscal year would also be coming up. Now is an election year where normally when there is a transition, there is always reduction in the transaction within the economy, because this businessmen will want to hold on to know which new government is coming up and what is the policy direction that government is likely to bring upon. Now, this coinciding with that is raising a very big question, which the CBN will still need to really provide answers to.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
All right. We'll be speaking with Sumbo Badijoku, a public affairs analyst. We'll take a break now. When we come back, we have more conversations for you. Stay with us.